My name is Paul Williams. I'm the director of the Regional Police Academy and Training Center, and I will be starting this morning's session. My actual program is again, the Regional Police Academy and Training Center, but I'm going to talk in general about what is the Development Council, just some background information on what it is. Just because of my travels, I know that a lot of folk who ask, what is the Development Council and what do we do? So I'm going to clarify that. So, the Development Council, or the plan itself, as we're going to talk about it, as you can see it coming up on the board here behind me. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Who are we and what are we? Again, we are the LRGDDC, Lower Rio Grande Valley Development Council. The way we were set up, there are 24 COG regions throughout the state of Texas. Years ago, the federal government said, hey, state, we're going to give you money. State said, hey, we need to distribute that money. Texas has 254 counties. It's very difficult to do things from Austin and make them equitable throughout the state. So the state set up what are called COG regions. There are 24 regions within the state of Texas. We are one of those 24. If you travel around the state of Texas, you will be influenced by the different COG regions. For example, in the Austin area, they are the Capital Area Planning Council. San Antonio, the Alamo COG. Houston, Galveston is a COG in of itself, etc. When money from the state is given to the local community or to the programs, they give it to the regional government or council of governments to better distribute those funds for the region itself. Because again, from Austin, it's kind of hard to figure out what's happening in the Rio Grande Valley, what's happening in the Panhandle Plains, what's happening in East Texas, etc. Because the state is extremely large. Of all 50 states, we have more counties than any other state. Again, we have 254 as of right now. Other states may have only a handful, 5 counties or less. So that gives us kind of an advantage there. So that's who we are, and that's kind of how we got started. The council has been around since 1967, which has been around longer than some of you have been alive, and it continues to function. And please don't raise your hand and tell me that you were born after 1967, because that would probably hurt my feelings, so let's not do that one. The purpose of the strategic plan: to identify the region's strengths, weaknesses, trends, vision statement, goals, objectives, specific tasks, potential resources, and expected outcome to implement over a 5-year period of time. We get together because people think that the Development Council drives the plan for the region. We do not. We do not do that. We get input from the community, say, what is it that the community would like for us to do? So as a region, we have these meetings so that folks from the community can come in and say, hey, let's look at economic development, let's look at homeland security, let's look at police training, etc. How can we make our region better? Because our overall objective is to make life much easier, much better for all of us. And if you look at our state, especially down here in the valley, we have a lot of areas that's open. We don't have people living all over the communities. We have a lot of open areas down here. How best can we serve those communities? There are certain rural areas of Cameron County, Willacy County, and Hidalgo counties where the population is extremely small. How can we best serve those communities? Because oftentimes, when funding comes from the state, those communities are not included just because of population. Doesn't mean those people are not important. They're extremely important. So our mission here is to work with the communities to help service not just the larger populations, but those sparsely populated areas as well. This is done by considering all the needs within the region. The region corporation is supported by the Valley residents, businesses, government officials, nonprofit organizations, educational institutions, economic development organizations, first responders, and other stakeholders within the region. We don't know all the answers, and we shall never know all the answers. The important thing is for us to get together, because as a collectivity, we are a lot more intelligent than we are as individuals. So if we work together, we can come up with a better plan to better serve our region, because this is our region. What the Development Council does, we facilitate preparation of the plan to help identify the region's need and develop a public forum process so we can actually articulate what do we plan to do in the next 5 years. What are our goals for the next 5 years? And more importantly, how are we going to accomplish those goals? Because we can all day long come up with what the goals are, but there's no means to accomplish those goals. Those goals are pretty much meaningless. So we come up with ways of how to do that. Incorporate region-wide involvement. encourage plan implementation, coordinate and assist the implementation process, and update the plan every 2 years in order to prepare for the next legislative session. Texas, as you know, has a biennial legislation. They meet every odd year starting in January and adjourn in May. So it's about 180 days that the legislature meets. Well, a lot of people don't know the legislature will consider several thousand bills. A lot of bills they consider. They will probably approve in a neighborhood of 3,000 to 5,000 new laws, probably. Then those go to the governor to ultimately be signed and made into law. And those laws affect everything that we do on a daily basis. 180 days to pass laws that will affect us for 2 years. So we need to let our voices be heard in Austin so that our representatives can better represent our needs down here in the valley. And that's part of our process here. We have a broad spectrum of entities that get involved with this through our regional coordination efforts. And most importantly, we get a lot of input from Valley residents and, of course, from businesses, because the people are important. And we got to remember the people down here in the valley. Our government and non-profit organizations are equally important. A lot of people think government drives everything. Government really does not. Our non-profits really drive a lot more than our government entities do. So we need to make sure that we include our non-profit or our non-government organizations as much as we can. Our educational and economic development activities, we're going to get those folk involved as well. Because through education, we can have a stronger workforce. If we have a stronger workforce, we can attract more businesses. If we attract more businesses, we can have a better standard of living, etc. If we have an undeveloped workforce, businesses are less likely to come into the area because they don't have any skilled workers. And I don't mean skilled by manual labor, I mean skilled by intellectual labor as well. When I lived in the Austin area years ago, one of the big moves after the real estate bust of the 1980s, Austin became high-tech. And it's because of the education level in the Austin area. Austin is one of the largest high-tech industries or areas in the state to this day. Dell Computers was founded in Round Rock, which of course is in the Austin area. They still do a lot of business in that area. Downtown Austin, a lot of the business are in intellectual properties because they recognize there are a lot of intelligent folk in the Austin area because of higher education. I believe there are 7 institutes of higher education in the Austin area, not including trade and technical schools. And of course, we get our stakeholders involved as well. So the description of our region. Our region consists of 3 counties, Willacy, Hidalgo, and Cameron counties. Those are primarily the 3 counties that we serve. We, from time to time, we also service people who are not directly in our region. We don't turn anyone down, but our primary concern are Cameron, Willacy, and of course, Hidalgo County. The area covers approximately 3,072 square miles. We're in the extreme southmost part of the state. Some people will say southeast. We are at the tip of the state of Texas, the very bottom part. What's unique about our region is we border not only Mexico to the south, but we also border the Gulf of Mexico out to the east. So it gives us a little bit more uniqueness throughout the state. We have a lot of rural areas to the north and to the west. If you go west of us, there's a lot of open rural areas. If you go north of us, a lot of rural areas before you get into Corpus Christi. When I moved down here, I told people I moved to South Texas. People said San Antonio. I said, no, further south. They said, well, Corpus Christi? I said, no, further south. They say, how far? I said, go to Corpus Christi, go another 120 miles. And the folk in Austin area said, what, are you living in Mexico? People don't know that this part of the state exists until election time. Then they kind of figure it out. We have a very diverse region throughout the county. Look at what's happening in McAllen, Edinburgh, and Mission area as opposed to Harlingen area as opposed to Brownsville area. Speaking of Brownsville, a unique thing about the city of Brownsville is to their south is a whole other country. To their east is the Gulf of Mexico. To their north and to their west is just open country. There are no cities, no large cities that are contiguous to the city of Brownsville. So that's a uniqueness within that municipality as well. Physically, we're physically and economically unique as well because of the way our populations are spread out throughout the region. Interesting facts about the region. We are 152 miles south of the closest metropolitan area. It's not up here, but I'm going to assume they're talking about Corpus Christi area. That would be my guess. There are 43 cities and 3 counties. There are 8 ports of entry into Mexico from down here, and I have been told from the federal government, from Laredo south, that is down to Brownsville, there are more ports of entry than in the rest of the southern parts of the United States. And I don't know how many there are, but there are a lot. Hidalgo County is the 4th largest county in the state of Texas. We have a population of over 1.2 million based on the 2010 census. And those are the enumerated people. Those are the folks who have been counted. We don't know about folks who have not been counted. We provide direct access for import and export, and we have 3 major transportation routes, that is expressways, here in the Valley area. And the good thing about our expressways, they are now becoming interstates. It would be Interstate 69. 2 of them will be here in the Valley. 281 will be 69C, if I'm correct, and 77 will be 69E. Is that correct? Yeah, 69E for East. So we'll have those. They are under construction right now. If you drive up those roadways, you'll see a lot of road construction that's happening with those right now. And that should help us out economically in the Valley as well. Some other facts. We have 4 navigation ports. We provide direct access for import and export markets. And we talked about the transportation routes already. There are 6 airports down here in the region. The Valley averages 330 days out of the year. It says beautiful subtropical weather. That sounds like an economic development type thing to say to folks, hey, Chamber of Commerce, I'm sorry, to say, hey, it's nice weather. It's kind of like when I was stationed in Arizona and people said, it's hot, but it's a dry heat. 110 degrees is hot. Our beautiful subtropical weather translates to hot and humid. People from out of the area say, well, how do you get used to the temperature down there? And say, well, we have this thing called air conditioning that we use down here in the Valley. And I don't know why people are amazed that we use air conditioning. Ironically, as hot as it is down here, it's actually hotter and more humid in the Austin area. At least where I live in Cameron County, we have the coastal breeze. So there's always a breeze in Cameron County. I'm not sure about Hidalgo County because I do not live here. In Austin, when it's hot, there is no breeze. So imagine the temperatures and humidity that we have when it's 100+ degrees with 90-some% humidity. The sun is shining directly on top of it, and all the buildings are grabbing that heat and radiating it back off, and there is no breeze. That's Austin, Texas. That's also Dallas, Texas. That's also Houston, Texas, and other places that I've traveled. So we do have that beautiful subtropical weather. I didn't write that, but I do like those words. Vision statement. As the international front door to global market, we are committed to ensure regional prosperity to all sectors, enhance the quality of life, enhance the security of our residents, and also to enhance the security of our residents. These things are extremely important to us down here. I'm sure you all heard recently on the news where there's a larger influx of illegal immigrants coming through this part of the country, and that influx is continuing. It's going to take a local effort, a regional effort, a state effort, and a federal effort to address the issue. But unfortunately, right now, the feds are addressing it, the state's addressing it, and locals addressing it. We're not addressing it together. And that's something that we need to work on as a community, is let the folk know, hey, let's work on this together because this is a regional issue and it does affect people. Our trends are very similar to the state and national. We have diversified international markets. Regional tourism is a growth industry. We get a lot of folk coming here during the winter months. They're known as winter Texans. If you go to other places in the country, like I was in Arizona, they call them snowbirds. I'm not sure what they call in California. In Florida, I think they call them residents, but every place you go, you see people coming from the colder states coming down to this part of the world. If you have not traveled to those colder states, travel there in the summertime. When I was in British Columbia in the summer of 1988, it was at the high 55 degrees. I don't think it gets that cold down here in the wintertime, but that was summertime temperatures. We have a lot of the increasing tax burdens because we have to pay for stuff. And the public pays for stuff through taxation. Increased technological capabilities and needs. If you notice, some of these things are going to require a higher level workforce. So our workforce needs to get the skills, and they get those through education. Another reason to get our educational partners involved as well. Small businesses remain the primary employers, not just here in the Valley, but throughout the United States. Small businesses, according to the best statistics I've read, that is what drives this country. It's not the larger businesses, it's the small businesses. That's what drives it. drives our country. Unfortunately, when we get more people, we have a rising crime rate. And that continues to increase, our rising crime rate. And we need to come up with new ways to address the crime rate that we have and to suppress any new crime. Increase in domestic and transnational crimes. We have crimes that are happening here in the United States and here in our area that have grown here in our area. We have crimes that are coming from outside of the country into our area because of our proximity to the border. One of the biggest crimes we have right now is that of human trafficking. I've been here for just over 5 years when I first moved here and wanted to address the issue of human trafficking. I was told that's a federal problem, it's not a local problem. Fortunately, the state of Texas realized that it is a local problem and a state problem. So Texas, at one point, was one of only 4 states that had human trafficking laws on the books. Now, most states have state laws addressing human trafficking. The state of Texas is doing a lot more to address the issue of human trafficking. Just on a side note, human trafficking worldwide, there are best estimates between 6 and 8 million people every year that become victims of human trafficking. In other words, modern day slavery. So it is a very big issue. So that's the transnational crime. Increased importance of lifelong continuing education to maintain our labor competitiveness and employability of our residents here in the Valley. And again, go back to education. How do we get these people ready to address those needs? Increasing need for flood control infrastructure. Every area in the country, perhaps in the world, has some sort of natural disaster that's organic to that area. I grew up in the Dallas area. We were part of what is called Tornado Alley. Tornadoes were rampant in the Dallas area. In the Austin area, where I spent most of my adult life other than the military, flooding is a very big issue in the area. Down here in the valley, hurricanes, which brings a lot of bad things as well. But we got to address those issues. We can't stop the hurricanes, but we can actually plan for those. And I know every year there are a lot of conferences to address planning for hurricanes, and I love the billboard that says, hoping things don't get bad is not a plan. It is not a plan. The best way not to make things worse is by making things better, and we can do that by planning. So we need to address the flood control because a lot of things that can happen to us here. The availability of education and technical institutions. We do have some here in the Valley. Right now, the University of Texas, both Brownsville and Pan American, they are combining to make, and I believe it's called the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. I believe they have announced a new president. I forgot the individual's name, and in the next few years, we should see a lot of increase in building and combining things with those 2 universities, which should also necessitate additional classes from the community colleges, Texas Southwest College, Texas State Technical College, and South Texas College. Generally, those things happen. I know it did happen in the Austin area with the influx of the Institutes of Higher Education. Multi-commodity international agricultural industry. We have a large agricultural industry here in the Valley area. If you go to a county, especially like Willacy County, you'll notice that most of the business there is farming industry, large agricultural industry. Growing educational infrastructure, I talked about that. Our strengths, our strategic geographic location. I think we're in a very good place here because so much stuff comes through the Valley area going to not just the other parts of the state, but other parts of the country. Human resources, we have an abundant trainable workforce, and we have a very young workforce here in the Valley. I don't know what the mean, does anybody know what the mean age is of our workforce here in the Valley? 24? So that's pretty young. Some of y'all are going, man, 24 is old. Some of us are going, I don't remember 24. Not the TV show, the age. The infrastructure, our ports of entry, our shipping ports, we have rail service, the airport, the highway system, and of course public transportation. Public transportation is growing a lot here in the Valley, and it's getting a lot better than what it was. Of course, we still have the rails. The rails is one of the most efficient ways to ship things throughout the country. Our roadways with trucking industry, our ports of entry, such as the Brownsville port with the shipping industry, etc. So there's a lot of advantages that we have down here in the Valley area to move goods. An organization reasoned immune from weaknesses, and we have some. One, we have high unemployment and lack of sustainable wages. That's one of the biggest Achilles heels we have in the Valley, is attainable wages, even among law enforcement officers. I can speak more about law enforcement because that's what I do. There are some agencies here in our region that are paying their police officers around $10, $11 an hour. And I know some people will say, well, that seems to be a pretty good salary. But you got to remember what police officers do. In the Austin area, my officers, when I was chief of police at the Austin Community College, their starting salary was over $35,000 a year. So if a police officer down here at $10 an hour, that's what, about $21,000, $22,000 a year. So you can see there's a big difference in what the pay is. And remember what we ask our police officers to do. They actually do stand in harm's way to protect us. We had an unfortunate incident. I don't want to go into a lot of details about it in Brownsville yesterday. And there was a lot of officers who had to put their safety on the line to rectify that situation. And the situation turned out at best as it could at this particular time. And I'm sure you all have heard about that on the news. We have a lack of diversified economy. There's just certain things that we do here, and we're starting to grow some. In Harlingen now we have a Sam's Club. Soon we'll get a Cracker Barrel. Out west there's a Sam's Club, and I don't remember the other name of the wholesale store. Costco, there we go. Costco also in the area. Raw water quality and quantity. Our fresh water, it seems to raise and lower just on a drop of a dime. For some reason, rain does not like coming to the valley. The storm we just had that passed from Kerrville all the way across the state of Texas, I was told that was a storm system from Mexico through Fort Worth. As it was moving northeast, it skipped the valley altogether. I don't believe there was any rain that came down here for whatever reason. So our fresh water is getting lower and lower. And we do need to have fresh water, not just for us, but for all mammals, for all of our crops, and for some other things. So that's a problem there. Minimum resources for economic development and physical infrastructure, and of course, health care access. We need to have better health care access so people can not just get well, but for people to stay well. Dr. Kenneth Cooper out of the Ken Cooper Institute in Dallas, Texas, was the first physician to start treating people who are healthy as opposed to waiting for people to get sick. It was preventative medicine. We need to do more of that down here in the Valley, and I don't know if we're actually doing that here in the Valley. I'm not in the healthcare industry down here and how well we're doing that, but we need to address issues like that. Other weaknesses. Resources support border needs due to federal and state mandates for non-resident immigrants. We have a lot of non-resident immigrants down here in the border region. On the news a couple of days ago, there was a young lady, I think she's from Guatemala, and she had a small child with her. And when the news reporter asked her why did she come here, she said in her country they have learned that if they are picked up by Border Patrol, they will be taken to a bus station in McAllen or somewhere. And if someone gives them a ticket, then they can go to whatever area, Houston, Dallas, or somewhere else within the United States. So if the word is out in her country to come here because Border Patrol will pick those people up and then they will be transported further into the United States, that was probably going to increase the influx of illegal immigrants here in the Valley area. I believe it was yesterday there was 250 that surrendered to Border Patrol, and the day before there was another 100. So those numbers alone, that's approximately 350 people in the last couple of days. I don't know what the stats are today. So we have a lot. Affordable standard transitional housing and related infrastructure. Again, this goes back to the type of houses that we have. Do we have houses that are sustainable for people to live in? Do we have houses that are good enough for people to live in? Oftentimes, a lot of the contractors are doing things, they're not fulfilling their contracts and leaving people without. People are spending hard-earned money on houses. Some people are trying to save up for houses. I was told yesterday, looking at some of the federal numbers, and I don't know the accuracy of this. However, people who are middle class, it's getting harder and harder for middle class people to buy houses because of the criteria in order to qualify. That is, people with money, they have the money, it's okay. People without money, there's government assistance. People in the middle class, well, you got too much, but you don't have enough. So we're kind of stuck in the middle, and that is affecting our housing. High rate of poverty. What is the poverty? Does anybody know what the numbers are for poverty? Is it for a single person? Is it $10,000 a year or $20,000 a year? No, federal numbers.
Oh, federal.
I don't remember what it is. I'm thinking it's under 10,000 a year. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
I'm sure someone will look at this video and say, man, that guy's an idiot. It's more than that. However, we do know that a lot of folk here in the Valley are living below whatever that federal minimum is. But the problem with the poverty rate, whether it's here in the Valley or in Austin, Texas, or in Chicago, the problem is instead of looking at a poverty level, we should look at what is called a livable wage. And that's based on the area itself. How much does it cost to live in that area to do certain things? And you have to include housing, food, gasoline, etc. Because each area is different. For example, the cost of housing on the West Coast is a lot more than the cost of housing here in the Valley region. The cost of housing in Austin, Texas is much higher than it is here in the Valley region. So I think, yes, sir.
Well, the poverty for one person is $11,490.
11,400? So I was really close.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the federal poverty guidelines for 2014.
Wow.
And as for the incidence of poverty, the Lower Grand Valley has a higher percentage than the state and the country.
Wow. Thanks, Jeff. So as you can see, our poverty rate is extremely high. Just under $11,500 is the poverty level for a single parent, according to federal numbers. High dropout rate, including low attainment of post-secondary degrees. And this is the dropout rate from high school. Extremely high dropout rate. How can we turn that around? What do we need to do to address that issue? Because without a high school diploma, it's very difficult for people to advance themselves. I know right now, because of the numbers in the military, you cannot get into any branch in the military unless you have a high school diploma. At some point, the U.S. Army will accept you with a GED, but now the numbers are high enough that they're not accepting GEDs at this particular point. That may change in a few years, but as of right now, that's what it is. The United States Marine Corps, and I'm a former Marine, will not accept you unless you have a high school diploma. So the dropout rate is extremely important, but you need to make sure people attain at least that so they can have a much better chance of moving forward in life for themselves and, of course, for their family. Crime prevention services. One of the interesting things about crime prevention, I was addressing a group of people in Harlingen about a year and a half ago. We're talking about vandalism. And everyone agreed that the vandalism was caused by kids. Kids were going around spray painting stuff, the graffiti, the vandalism. And then I asked them, I said, well, are these your kids that are doing it? And of course they said, no, they're not our kids. I said, so they're not your kids or your kids or your kids, but it's happening in this particular case in Harlingen, Texas. So are there kids coming from other cities, from Mission, from Brownsville, from Dallas, coming in to vandalize the area? And they said, well, that's dumb. I said, what if not your kids? Whose kids are they? And then I think the people finally got it. You know what? They have to be our kids. It has to be from within. So our crime prevention methods, one of the first things we have to do is take a deep breath and realize a lot of the crimes, they're being committed by folk that we hang out with, people that we know. That's the first part. We have to address that for crime prevention. Another thing with crime prevention, it's not a police effort, it's a community effort. We all need to get involved in that and do better. High crime rate and lack of investigative resources. We have limited resources from law enforcement for what we can do. A lot of people think that as law enforcement officers, we can do magical things as they see on television. We don't have the budgets, we don't have the resources to do what you see on television. The interesting thing about the investigative resources, the law allows us to only do certain things. For example, everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. We can't go in and take people's property without due process of law. And I understand that a lot of people who are not law enforcement think that we can do that. Legally, we cannot do that. That limits what we can do. So we do have a high crime rate, and we do have some lack of investigative resources, but we can get better at what we do. We can always get better at what we do. Lack of adequate health care insurance. I'm not sure how this has changed since the advent of the Affordable Health Care Act that came out, was it 2010? And now we're in 2014. I'm not really sure, has that gotten better? Has it gotten worse, or has it remained the same? Does anybody know what has happened with the Affordable Health Care Act since that has taken effect as far as adequate health care insurance?
Still messed up.
Say again?
It's still messed up.
Still messed up? Smooth as mud? So it's out there. The Affordable Health Care Act is out there. Some people call it Obamacare, but it's actually Affordable Health Care is the actual name for it. Vulnerability to weapons of mass destruction due to proximity of the border. I have personally not heard of any issues of weapons of mass destruction. I know in Brownsville, have you all have heard of that?
No.
Haven't heard of that down here, but it is a concern. I really don't believe that the weapons of mass destruction should be our big priority. I think it should be weapons of mass disruption. The difference is destruction will destroy things. You take down towers in New York City and people are concerned. You drive a plane into the Pentagon, people are concerned. Mass disruption. You remember a few years ago when New York City lost power for a few days? That's disruption. It disrupted something. If someone was to encroach our security system, our computer system at our banks, that would disrupt the way we do business. I think that's more important, and I believe that we as a society, not just Valley, but as a nation, we may want to take a harder, faster look at that because that's more concerning. Just like I believe it was the Chinese who recently encroached some of our security systems. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say that that's a good recommendation to change that word.
From
Destruction to disruption,
Yep.
to make it official. Does it still say weapon of mass?
This says vulnerability to weapons of mass destruction, event due to proximity to the border. Years ago in Austin, we started looking at weapons of mass effect. And weapons of mass effect included weapons of mass destruction and weapons of mass disruption as well. So because weapons of mass disruptions, we still need to consider those. But weapons of mass disruption, we need to address those. So just, can you put that weapons of mass effect?
No, they don't have a USB.
Okay, we'll make it happen. If you write a handwritten note, I'll make it happen. Thank you, ma'am. High teens pregnancy rate and sexually transmitted diseases. Very high teen pregnancy rate. I was told recently that the middle school where I taught at in Austin, this past year, they had 0 pregnancies in that middle school. Same population, same kids. I have no idea what the middle school did differently, but they had 0 reported pregnancies in that middle school. So maybe we need to look at other areas and say, hey, how are you all addressing teen pregnancy? Because with teen pregnancy, it's not just a teenager having a child. There's a lot more to it. Generally, if a teenager is having a child, there's probably going to be a higher chance of not completing high school, so a high school dropout. There's probably going to be a higher chance of that child and that teen parent being on social assistance, which means more tax dollars supporting that, etc. So there's a cycle involved there. So it's not just that one teen having a child. There's a lot more to it than that. If you consider all the peripheral things. Accelerated population growth outstripping our infrastructure. The population here is booming. It is growing. It is growing very fast. Availability of substance abuse services. Our state, our country, years ago declared a war on drugs, and we've been fighting that war since the 1980s. Everything that I've read, the general effect of the war on drugs has been an increase in the price of street drugs, filling up our jails and filling up our prisons. And that's about it. But we still have this large influence of drugs coming in. You hear on the news so many pounds of drugs being taken down by Border Patrol, by Customs, by local law enforcement, by state law enforcement, etc. Perhaps we need to spend more time thinking about substance abuse. How can we treat people who are addicted to substances? Maybe we need to focus a tad bit more on that. Because a lot of people who are inmates, that is, they're in prison or jail, perhaps they need to be inpatients to get treated for substance abuse. Because jail and prison is not the place to treat a person with a substance abuse problem. Barriers and lack of resources to improve substandard housing. That's one of our weaknesses. We need to overcome that to get better housing. Look at the colonias and other places that people are pretty much forced to live in because of their economic situation. Lack of mental health care facilities and services. Mental health has never really been looked at as far as money been given to help people with mental illnesses. And that continues even to this day. There's a lot of causes for mental illnesses. And what's really interesting is mental illnesses are not contagious. A person with a mental illness cannot give you their mental illness. However, every one of us in this room we could become mentally ill. It could be some sort of incident or accident. It could be some sort of chemical or lack of chemical processing in our brain. It could be a substance that we take legally or illegally. It's a multitude of things that could happen. Or just by getting older, such as Alzheimer's. So anything that could happen in that regard. So we need to address mental health. Lack of youth emergency shelters. What can we do for our youth? Where are we putting our youth right now? What's happening with our youth? We have lack of shelters here. Our goals. The Development Council is composed of several departments and programs that provide different goals and strategies for the regional plan. Each department will present these goals and strategies, and we do have the workshop agenda that you all should have. It's a blue and white form. It shows when each program will be here. On July 18th, we will have our final input deadline, so anything that if you don't include it here or you forget about it, you can email the appropriate director and we will include it in our plan. On the 6th of August, we'll have our final regional plan. That will be at our main offices, if I remember correctly, of One Railroad. And that's 301, is it be here?
The final?
The final will be here, so, okay. Correction, the final will be here at the same location. And we will present it to our board for final approval on September 24th. The final approval for the plan. So anything that we don't cover, I believe the day is the last session, it goes all day long. You're more than welcome to email the appropriate directors. And if you don't know which director to email, you can always email directly to me and I'll make sure it gets to the appropriate folk as well.
Paul, on the agenda, I think there's an email address for each of the program directors or the program area.
I believe it's the last slide. If I remember correctly, it's the last slide. Okay, a regional plan is a top priority to establish these things. The annual work plan will be the implementation tool. We'll implement the regional meetings for the achievement of goals, as we're doing right now. Conduct several work sessions in East County for the general public. Conduct one regional meeting for the draft plan before final approval. And of course, we have the biennial review of the plan. Will coincide with the state legislative session. Again, the legislature, they will convene in January and they will adjourn in May. Usually they adjourn right before Memorial Day in May of next year. The implementation process will ensure that the regional strategic plan is a true regional effort, of which no single agency or entity can be held responsible for all the goals and strategies contained therein. And the reason that we go out to the community is so everyone can have input, so we can see what's happening throughout the region. For specific information, I don't know if you can see that from where you are, it's a lot on this screen up here, but those are the emails for all the different agencies that we have. Area agency on agency, environmental resources, economic development, Hidalgo County Metropolitan Planning, Homeland Security, 911, Valley Metro, and I don't know why my name is not up there. Maybe it is and I don't see it. So I got one more and I'm not up there. I guess for some reason we're not that important. The Regional Police Academy is there as well. I will give you my email address. My feelings are hurt because I'm not on the screen. It's on that, okay. But my email address, in case you want it, is well, if you have good things for the Police Academy, my email address is pwilliams@lrgbd.org. If you have bad things to say about the Academy, my email is iduran@lrgbdc.org. I'm kidding, that's not. Either way, anything for the Police Academy, you can email me. Is there any other agency not listed up there? I know I'm not on here, but that is the last slide because it goes in there next.
You're the only one?
I'm the only one that's been included. Wow. My feelings do hurt. It was supposed to be, yes. I thought there was. That's why I was thinking there was somebody else who was missing, but one. I thought we had 9. So that would be 8. I thought there was one more. Well, there's 7 up there, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I thought there was 9 departments.
Paul, the one that we have, it does have your email address.
Right, she was just telling me it's on there, so.
Don't look back.
Yeah, but
It's
it's on
not
there.
on the slide.
I want my name in lights. I want my name to be in lights. There we go. Any questions on the strategic plan for 2015-2020? Because with that said, unless somebody has a better idea, we'll go and talk about the police academy. I think. And I will refer to Manuel on that Thursday. Well, I'll defer to you all as well. Y'all can have an eye on this, so make sure I get this right, because if there's a way to not do this right now, we'll probably do that first. We already talked about the Development Council and what it is. In general terms, I don't know if you can see the whole map. There's a close-up of our area, but as you can see, we are the lower part of the state. Our main address, I have no idea what this cute little doodad here is. Yeah, I don't know what that is. But that's our address, without that little fancy U thing. What is that?
Be a star.
Put this star.
It'll be like,
Okay. We ran out of commas. Throughout the plan, as you scroll down through it, you can see everything that's in there and listed by page number. This is a very thick packet for the whole packet, and there are some copies floating around if you want to take a look at the entire thing. But the overall plan process, the Development Council is really the planning agency formed under Texas law to deal with problems and planning needs that cross the boundaries of individual local governments that require regional attention. The council coordinates planning efforts, provides a regional approach to problem solving through cooperative action, and provides direct services. Council also serves to implement an important role in assessing state and federal agencies in their respective programs in the region. Let's do this kind of democratically. If y'all want me to read all this, I will. If not, then I won't. If there's anything y'all want to make changes in this, as you read through it, and let me, or as you've gone through it, let me know, and I'll make those up there. So, second paragraph.
and all that's in the presentation that you just gave.
Okay. So it's pretty much everything that we just went over
Yeah.
in that presentation.
Here's what's the summary of it better. Yeah.
Okay. So everything we talked about before, and it says we're 236 miles south of San Antonio, 152 miles south of Corpus. I thought we were 130 miles south of Corpus.
We moved.
We keep moving the stage.
We moved down.
Well, no, we were 130 something. Now this says 150 something. I thought we were 130 something, of course. So we keep moving south. So pretty soon we're going to move.
Mexico.
Our headquarters is going to be at 301 South Railroad Street, Tamaulipas.
You mean we're not?
I talked about the population, went over that before, what our population is. The one thing I don't know, somebody can, what is MSA? Metropolitan,
Statistical area,
thank you. Which means,
just a combination of areas that meet the criteria for like a metro area.
Okay.
Metropolitan.
got it.
They make more money than the rest of the area.
So MSA would be people living in a certain geographical location.
The whole statistical data.
Okay.
That's what, and we have two of them here in the bathroom.
Thank you. Okay. It's more about the transportation infrastructure, pretty much everything I went over before, so if you have any questions, please let us know. The vision statement, we talked about that before. In the presentation we went through, our current trends, the good things, the bad things, the different things. And the one thing that we have done is, we didn't hold back, we said, hey, we have some advantages and we have some disadvantages. And we want people to know that we do have weaknesses as well. We don't want to hide that from anyone, so it's transparency on our part. The challenges, of course, those we bear out. Another way of saying our weaknesses. Okay, Regional Police Academy and Training Center. What do we do as a Police Academy and Training Center? In a nutshell, we provide training for pretty much every law enforcement agency in the Tri-County area. The only other academies, City of McAllen, they have their own. They train their own personnel. The City of Pharr, in conjunction with South Texas College, they have an academy out of South Texas College, which is a day academy. Texas Southmost College, they have an academy as well, and they do a lot of training in the Brownsville area. Everyone else in the region pretty much comes through us for both the basic training and the in-service training. As far as police academies, there are two major types. You have an open academy and you have a closed academy. A closed academy is like the city of McAllen. They only train their employees. It's a closed academy because no outsiders necessarily go into their basic academy. We are an open academy, as is the one that FAR has through South Texas College and the one that Texas Southmost College has, in respect that anyone can come into our academy as long as you meet the criteria to get into the academy. So that's the difference between an open and closed academy. The basic peace officer course, that's the basic course everyone has to go through in order to become a Texas State Peace Officer. And right now, the state minimum, I believe, is 643 hours. We're doing in excess of 800 hours in our basic academies. We have academy locations in Harlingen, both a day academy and night academy, in Mission, again, day and night, and City of Hidalgo, again, a day and night academy as well. But our in-service courses, those are courses for people who are already licensed as peace officers or as law enforcement officers. For example, in the City of Hidalgo, this week we're doing what is called the Mental Health Officer Program. It's a 40-hour course for peace officers and corrections officers to work with people who are having mental health issues. We've done some work in Brownsville, different classes we've had with the Brownsville Police Department for in-service courses such as Valor, which is a program for police officers dealing with assaults on law enforcement officers. We've worked with San Benito to do what is called the ALERT training, which is response to active shooter, and we're bringing that class back again. Fortunately, the people from San Marcos, they'll be here in July. They'll do it both in the City of Hidalgo for 2 days and in the City of San Benito for 2 days. Cost the local officers absolutely nothing. That's funded by a grant through the governor's office. So it's kind of what we do in a nutshell as an academy. We deliver updated training techniques, procedure, laws, any other areas organic to law enforcement and corrections. Our business changes as a legislative change. If they make changes in the law, then we have to change what we do in order to meet those changes under the law. Provide professional development opportunities for law enforcement personnel to maintain their state peace officer license and complete courses designed to fulfill the requirements for the different level of peace officer licenses. Right now we have 4 level licenses. We have our basic license, the intermediate, the advanced, and the master. Each level, there are certain qualifications that an officer has to not only meet, but to continue to meet in order to maintain their license. Every officer has to have a minimum of 40 hours of training every 2 years, minimum. Without that 40 hours of training, the officer's license goes inactive, which means that individual cannot be a police officer or a corrections officer until they get their license reactivated, which is through the state of Texas. What's new to us this year, as of January, telecommunicators, those are dispatchers or call takers, they also have to be licensed through the Commission on Law Enforcement, and their licensing program is a 40-hour course called the Basic Telecommunicators course and a 36-hour course called Crisis Communication for Telecommunicators. And then they take a state exam as well, and they have to do a minimum of 20 hours every 2 years by state rule. And we are providing those classes as well. Provide professional development opportunity for corrections officers and as peace officers to maintain their licenses as well. And right now, for the peace officer, have the basic, intermediate, and advanced certificates. And one thing we do need to add that's not up here, can you add this on there? Would be the same language, but provide professional development opportunity for telecommunicators to maintain their state licenses. Because that was new for us for this year. So that would be one change for us. We also offer instructor level courses. Where it says T-Close Basic Instructor, can you change T-Close to T-Cole? There's an Advanced Instructor course, the Police Firearms Instructor course, and for the first time, which we just did a few weeks ago, we have the Patrol Rifle Instructor course, so if allowed that one, etc. We also do certification in certain areas such as ASP, which is Armament System and Procedures. That will be the Tactical Baton. PDCT, which is Person Support and Control Tactic, which is Defensive Tactics. SFST, which is Standardized Field Sobriety Testing. for people who are suspected of driving while intoxicated, and other certifications like that are industry certifications. TASER is another one. TASER, by the way, is Thomas A. Smith Electronic Rifle. Is what it is an acronym for that device, but it's an electronic device. Well, for the basic peace officer courses, abbreviated BPOC, for those individuals wishing to attain their Texas Peace Officer licenses, we do offer that course. That's our basic academy I was speaking of earlier. That's 643 minimum hours according to the state, but we're doing in excess of 800 hours at our location for that. Are there any questions on any of those goals? We should move on to the next page. Accomplishment. We have a very high success rate on our state exam, and we have consistently exceeded the state requirement. State requirement, we have first attempt has to be 80%. That is, 80% of the people have to pass the state exam on the first attempt. We have consistently been at 88% and higher on first attempt on our state exam. And we continually strive towards that because we want people to be successful. And one of the ways we do that is by having a very high standard for our academy. Our minimum standard to stay in our academy is people have to score at least 80% and maintain an 80% average throughout the academy. Failure to maintain an 80%, then they can be removed from the academy. So it's a very high standard. Some people think the standard is too high, but we do that to ensure that our cadets, when they go take the state exam, they will be successful. Because some agencies, only because Brownsville is here, for example, if Brownsville hires a person as a police officer, they send them to the police academy. Brownsville has invested a lot of money in that individual. They have the salary, the cost of the academy, equipment, the background investigation, and everything else for that individual. And how much that costs per officer, I don't know. I know in Travis County, back in the 1980s, we estimated, not including the officer's salary, we were spending around $54,000 per new employee to bring them on board. I don't know what that would be in 2014 dollars at this particular point, but it is very expensive. Delivery of legislative mandated and in-service courses for law enforcement personnel. Some classes are required by legislation. For example, any peace officer with an intermediate certification or above has to take the legislative updates every 2 years. We make sure that course is available for them. Those who do not have the intermediate or above, they have to take classes such as cultural diversity, special investigative topics, etc. We provide those classes as well. We do other in-service classes that officers are interested in taking, such as the mental health officer program, patrol rifle instructor course, the response active shooter course, because of what's happening out in the field in our communities, and say, hey, we need to get our officers trained to deal with those types of situations. We do the legislative mandated course for our corrections personnel as well, and one that we need to add is delivery of legislative mandated in-service courses for telecommunicators. Again, the telecommunicators is new, so you'll hear me from time to time asking her to include them as well. Expanded basic, there should be expanded basic peace officer academy to the Hidalgo location, both day and night courses. We've already done that. We have the Day and Night Academy in the city of Hidalgo. It is at the Border Security and Technology Training Center over on Bridge Street. The Agricultural Diversity and Safety Program for juvenile probation and juvenile detention officers. We work a lot with with both the juvenile and adult probation officers to do classes for them on cultural diversity, on safety, and other issues. I was actually contacted by them earlier this week from the folk in Cameron County asking if we would do a safety presentation for them as well, for their juvenile probation officers. And we're working to make that happen. I believe that's going to be in September. They are waiting. We're waiting for them to set the date, I should say. We partnered with what is called the Elder Abuse Awareness Program. We had a lady from the Corpus area, Jennifer Cantinelli. She has come down and done some training for us on how to deal with and how to work with elderly clients, or how to work with elderly people. There were custom courses of interest to law enforcement, such as autism awareness. We're working with Dr. Stephanie Sokolowski out of Edinburgh on putting together a course for us, and Dennis DeBow, who's a retired police officer out of Florida. He actually travels throughout the country talking about autism because he has a child who's autistic, and being a police officer, we want to make sure officers were able to deal with autistic, especially autistic children, in an effective way. So we're working on putting that together, and right now we're scheduling for Mr. DeVal to be here on the 19th of August. And we will make the autism recognition class available in our new calendar, which will start in September of this year. Other courses such as Officer Survival, Cartel, and the Cartel and Zeta games, interviewing techniques, weapons awareness, officer safety, etc. Because we have a very interesting business. It's a very fluid situation anytime that we're in any situation we're involved in. And one of the things I don't believe that people who are not law enforcement understands that every time we go to a situation, there is always at least one gun involved. A lot of officers don't get it either, but all police officers carry a firearm. So the firearm that I'm carrying, it can be as dangerous to me as it can to anyone else. In the wrong hands, it can be extremely dangerous. So we have to train officers, and we're training officers on how to become aware of their situation, that is where they are at any given time, to keep themselves and everyone else safe. These are some pictures we have from around the community. Can you see the first? This is one of our former cadets. He is now a deputy constable in Cameron. I think it's precinct 3, but I'm not really sure. This is a program we did at an elementary school in Edinburgh. And I forgot the name of the school, but it was on an alcohol awareness program. Our cadets here, former cadets here, they were doing mechanics of arrest, that is, appropriately handcuffing individuals. And here were some of our cadets on the gun range. And we do take cadets out to the gun range. If you go through the concealed handgun licensing course, right now the state of Texas mandates between 4 to 6 hours of classroom, and there is no mandatory time for being on the range. All you have to do is shoot 50 rounds and be qualified. For us, our cadets are spending 48 hours for firearms training. And most of that is on the ranges. 8 hours in classroom, then the remaining 40 hours is actually on the gun range. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any classes for the public safety, any type of safety?
Yes.
Firearm?
We haven't done any firearms training for the public as of yet. That's always a possibility. We have just finished a safety course for the public. Ken Jones, our executive director, asked me a few months ago to address the issue of workplace violence. And I put together a course on workplace violence, and I need to get with our directors and say, hey, what's a good day or good days for me to come out to the different areas and present the response to workplace violence course. So that is one that we have done. I believe it's in Brownsville. I'm not sure if you know the date that Alert will do the.
Severe response to active
Correct.
agreements.
What date is that? Do you know?
July 24th?
Sounds about right.
100%, yeah.
Late July, the good folk from Alert out of San Monaco say they're going to come and do a civilian response to active shooters. It's going to be a trainer course, and I've been invited to attend that course. I'm about to register for it to add to the 2-hour block that I put together on response to workplace violence. Because we think about workplace violence of a person with a gun. What we don't think about in workplace violence is, what about the individual who's just throwing chairs, or who just hits another employee, or who is stalking an employee? And those are things that I've addressed in the program that I put together, because I think those things are important for us as employees. Did I answer your question? Yes, sir.
Paul, one of the items that came up on discussion yesterday, when it came to Homeland Security was, and I think there was another, or maybe it was a discussion there with someone else, is that the current, incidents of guns that are being used, and you hear this in the news, all those individuals that have shootings that have, their mental capacity, mental health, and they have weapons, and so how can we have a strategy on addressing that issue?
Mental health and firearms is, I believe, the area you're saying. How do we address that? Well, under the laws of the state of Texas and the United States, any competent person who is not a convicted felon, who's not been treated for mental illnesses, not in a mental health facility, not taking medications for mental health, and has not been convicted of any level of domestic violence, can legally possess a firearm. And that's a lot of people argue and say that's guaranteed under the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And remember I said we as law enforcement can only do certain things. There are things that we are not aware of. For example, family members may know the medical history of their family members. So it's incumbent upon all of us as individuals that if we do own firearms, to keep them safely secured and safely locked up. In the course, one of the courses that we were talking about was how do people secure their weapons safely at home? And that's extremely important. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but it's a much broader issue. And I do believe we'd have to get people from the mental health side, people from the federal government, particularly the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and local law enforcement involved in how best can we deal with that without violating the rights of any individual. Because there's a balancing act there between mental illness and the rights of the individual. And that probably did not clear things up for you, but that's where we're stuck.
Actually, what you just mentioned, that can be, a local strategy to, one of the, whatever goal you might have there that
Okay.
you might apply to.
Okay. So how will we phrase that? The goal would be to address.
So actually, it would be more of a strategy of bringing in, like you mentioned, law enforcement, mental health, authorities. And just like what you mentioned a moment, right after you mentioned that. Bringing those parties together.
So bringing in the federal government, state government, and mental health professionals to address the issue of mental health and firearms. Okay. Get that? Perhaps that will be a good goal. Yeah. Anything else? All right. So our regional plan. Again, we're talking about the police academy. I hope this is all police academy. Through updated training on techniques, procedure, laws, any of theirs organic to law enforcement and corrections, the corrections profession to the regional public safety community. Our objective: provide professional development opportunities throughout the region for law enforcement, corrections, and support staff. As I said earlier, we have to change what we do because the legislator said, hey, you all need to change what it is. We have to change what we do because something in the public has happened, and now we have to look at it much differently than we've done before. So we have to change how we approach certain things, how we deal with certain people. And the way we do that is through training, because officers on the street are trained to respond a certain way. For example, if you respond to certain people with autism, they may get what is called a sensory overload if you touch them or if you approach them. So and I'll use Ray for example, since he is a police officer, if he is dealing with me as a citizen, when he comes to touch me to try to get me to leave the room, if I make any motions towards him that he will perceive as aggressive as a police officer, he's going to defend himself. That means he is going to do his best to restrain me. Well, if I happen to be autistic, by him touching me, that actually caused that situation. So now we're training our officers that if we know if a person is autistic, we need to deal with them differently than we would if they are not autistic, or if they have Alzheimer's, if they don't have Alzheimer's, etc. I hope that makes sense to everyone. So that's part of us having to change what we do. And we have to rethink a lot of things that we do. The ever-changing environment of public safety demands law enforcement corrections professionals who are ready to meet those challenges while protecting the lives and property of the community. Texas legislature needs to expand, Texas law changes and evolves. Therefore, law enforcement corrections professionals must be cognizant of changes to safely enforce and uphold the laws of the United States and the state of Texas. Such laws include federal and state constitution, statutory and case law enacted by the appropriate legislative body and or enacted by executive mandate or court ruling. Our main laws in our country is the United States Constitution. Then we have our federal case law. Then we have our state constitution, and we have state case law. And we're obligated to abide by those things. For example, right now, one of the, I will call it one of the pluses that we have in our business is a law called Graham versus Common, which says that an officer will be judged on what is called the reasonable officer basis. Did the officer use techniques that were reasonable based on what a reasonable officer would have done, not what a reasonable person in the public would have done based on the officer's training, skills, etc. However, we have to consider what crime was taking place or was about to take place. Was the person trying to escape, and or was that person a threat to himself, another person, or to the officer? So we have to teach officers about that particular case law because that does affect how we do business and where we do business. One of the things we have in our business when it comes to levels of control, we consider any sort of strikes or kicks. Generally, they are called hard empty hand control. An intermediate weapon will be like a nightstick or a taser. So hard empty hand control will be just below that. One of the school districts here in the area, they consider any strikes to be intermediate control because their officers are working with school kids. So we have to make that adjustment because of that particular agency. And again, it goes back to what we're training our officers to do. So was there any questions or comments on that section? A measure of outcome of this goal, the number of officers trained throughout the 2-year training unit and 4-year training cycle established by the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. And the number of courses offered during the reporting cycle. Did you make that correction from T-close to T-hole?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, where you see Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, Officer Standards and Education, it is now called Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. Instead of T-close, it's now T-cole. The executive director, Kim Vickers, he gave us about an hour talk as to why the name was changed. All I heard was, like Charlie Brown's adults, was womp, 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 womp. Basically, the legislator said the name is T-cole, so it is T-cole. That's it. That's a short one. Our strategy: offer in-service training for peace officers and law enforcement officials, offer state-updated mandated courses for peace officers, offer in-service courses for county jailers, that is correction officers, and we'll add offer in-service and basic training courses for telecommunicators. Of course, our resources are federal laws and Constitution, Texas state laws, etc. Everything that is up there on the list. I don't know if there's anything else we should add to that particular list. Any questions on that part? Let's go on to the next part. Provide professional development opportunities for law enforcement personnel to maintain their state licenses and complete course designed to fulfill the requirements for the different levels of licenses. And we will ensure that law enforcement personnel receive training and professional development to perform their duties and responsibilities. The laws changed throughout the legislative or executive action and/or court mandate. Officers are required to keep abreast of those changes. Officers are afforded different levels of proficiency based on years of service and professional development accomplishments. Those levels of proficiency for peace officers include the basic, intermediate, and advanced, and master peace officers. Measure outcome for this goal: the number of courses offered and the number of officers completing those courses. The final outcome is how officers respond to situations in real-world environments. As we train officers in the academy, how they respond in the environment, that is our ultimate measure of outcome. How are they doing? If we're teaching officers how to deal with people who are autistic or who has Alzheimer's, our outcome measure will be when an officer does encounter a person with one of those disabilities, how are those officers responding to those individuals? That is our ultimate outcome measure. Our strategy is to provide professional development for Texas peace officers and law enforcement officials, as defined by the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure. Continue to provide professional development opportunities throughout the region. Develop course design to confront current issues law enforcement officers encounter in the performance of their duties. And of course, our potential resources are all listed in the bottom section here. Am I going too fast? I hope not. Any questions on that section? The basic peace officer course. Of course, we offer that course, and here we have to make some changes as well. Ensure that cadets receive the required training as stipulated by should be T-code to attain peace officer licenses and other courses in the BPOC or the law enforcement profession, but in excess of the required curriculum for licensure. And we've included TASER, OC spray, SFST, etc., because we do offer a lot of breakout sessions. That's why we're doing over 800 hours. To become a peace officer, one must complete the established training as established by the Texas Occupation Code and change all the T-classes, right? And T-code rules. One of the requirements of one must successfully complete the basic peace officer course, and the standards for the basic peace officer course must adhere to a rule set forth by the Commission and the Police Academy Advisory Committee. We do have an advisory committee. We have 13 members on that committee. Our current chair is Chief Olga Maldonado from the city of Mercedes. We have representatives from all 3 counties, Willacy, Cameron, and Hidalgo counties that sit on our committee, and we do meet quarterly to talk about training issues, police training issues for the region. Additionally, Academy success is measured by the percentage of cadets who successfully passed the licensing exam on the first attempt. The Academy has maintained 80% or higher first-time success rate to maintain a standard to offer courses through the Commission on Law Enforcement. If we fail to meet that 80% standard, we can lose our license. The first action for the Commission would be to give us a written reprimand or warning. From there would be suspension or probation, that is. And then finally, they could take our license. And the 5 years I've been here, we have not even been close to that because we have been at or above 88% in the 5 years that I've been here. Our highest, I believe, is 95%. There's a lot of times for this goal of number of cadets who enroll in and complete the basic Peace Officers Academy and pass the Peace Officers exam on the first attempt. No, we don't look at just the people who are enrolled in the academy, but also those who go all the way through and then pass the state exam on the first attempt. And what's included in this now is the telecommunicators, and we'll have to come up with some language on that as well, to figure out the language for telecommunicators. Our first telecommunicators, we had 12, and of the 12, 11 passed the state exam the first time. And what that percentage is, I really couldn't tell. So we'll continue to offer the BPOC. I don't know what just happened to that. I just got lost. Continue to offer the BPOC as stipulated by the Commission and the Texas Occupation Code, and offer courses beyond what is required in the basic curriculum. And you can see the resources here, the rules and regulations from the Commission, Occupation Code, Defensive Tactics, Monadnock batons, taser, etc. Any questions on that? The implementation talked about how we implement things, and I believe we covered this in the orientation, like our other programs. This is the implementation of our actual program. These are all the meetings that we have set up, etc. throughout the week. The acronyms for each agency is listed here in the back, so if you're interested in what those things are. And I really want to see if we're listed in this section. So let's go to this section. PQ. I thought we were listed as RPA, but I guess we're not. Guess we're just not there. I'm hurt. I'm really hurt. Where it says WD, weapons of mass destruction, we may want to add weapons of mass, weapons of mass effect, and then weapons of mass disruption as well. And I believe that is it. Are there any questions, or did I go through that too quickly? No questions, no comments? Nothing from Brownsville?
No.
Any questions, ma'am? Any questions? All right, well, I appreciate